Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are taking a really fascinating journey that spans the history and the future of medicine. We're going to explore exactly how doctors are transitioning from being these old-school clinical detectives, physically decoding the really subtle and sometimes totally misleading signs of respiratory distress, to becoming digital doctors who actually manage these very same conditions using cutting-edge remote technology. So if you've ever wondered how a doctor reads the hidden clues of the human body, or how modern tech is completely flipping that script, you are absolutely in the right place.
Okay, let's dive right in. Here's our roadmap for today's explainer. We'll start by decoding common respiratory symptoms, and then we'll look at the fascinating trap of referred pain. From there, we are going to examine respiratory alkalosis and the very real threat of pneumothorax. Finally, we'll tie the whole shebang together by looking at modern remote patient monitoring. I promise you, understanding this clinical pathology directly ties into the future of healthcare administration and technology.
All right, Section 1, Decoding Symptoms, Common Respiratory Signs. Long before a blood test is drawn or an X-ray is ever ordered, a skilled clinician acts a lot like a detective, reading the body's tiny micro-clues to figure out exactly what's going around in the respiratory system.
So let me start with a question for you to think about. Can a shoulder ache actually be a lung problem? I mean, it sounds completely counterintuitive, right? Why on earth would your shoulder hurt if your lungs are the things struggling? Well, hold on to that mystery for a second, because to solve it, we first need to look at how we decode the most basic respiratory signals.
Take the humble cough, for example. A cough isn't just a generic reflex. It is actually a highly specific diagnostic clue. A loud, brassy cough often indicates pressure on the trachea, maybe even from a tumor. A hollow, sort of bovine-sounding cough, that can actually point to a recurrent laryngeal nerve palsy. A barking cough is a classic textbook sign of croup. And a persistent chronic cough, well, that opens the door to investigating things like pertussis, tuberculosis, or asthma. Literally, the sound itself is the clue.
Then we have dyspnea. The medical definition here is absolutely crucial. It's the subjective sensation of shortness of breath. Subjective is the key word. There is a massive difference between a patient who is visibly laboring to breathe and a patient's actual internal perception of breathlessness. Sometimes the breathing looks totally normal to an observer, but the patient feels an immense, smothering tightness. It's an excessive work of breathing that is often exacerbated by exertion.
Which brings us to Section 2, Referred Pain, the Diagnostic Trap. This is where the human nervous system really shows off some of its most fascinating and honestly, sometimes completely misleading physiological quirks. Now, what's really interesting here is the T9 dermatome. So a dermatome is basically an area of skin supplied by a single spinal nerve. In our bodies, the T9 dermatome is shared by the lower part of the lung and the abdomen. Because of this shared wiring, a patient might come into the clinic complaining of severe abdominal pain, but our detective clinician knows that lower lung issues, like pneumonia, can actually masquerade as a stomach problem.
Ah, and here is the answer to the puzzle we set up earlier. Why might a lung problem cause a shoulder ache? Well, it all comes down to the C3, C4, and C5 dermatomes. Irritation of the diaphragm, which sits right at the bottom of the lungs and can be inflamed by pleurisy, triggers the phrenic nerve, and that nerve refers pain directly up to the tip of the shoulder. A smart clinician has to distinguish this referred diaphragmatic pain from actual musculoskeletal issues like cervical spondylosis, which actually originates in the neck.
Moving right along to Section 3, Respiratory Alkalosis, Chemical Imbalances. We are shifting our focus now from localized nerve pain to massive systemic chemical imbalances in the blood that happen when the respiratory system is in major distress. So what happens when a patient is in severe pain or super anxious? Well, they often start hyperventilating, and this kicks off a step-by-step chemical cascade. Because they're breathing so incredibly fast, excessive carbon dioxide is literally blown off and lost. As a result, the partial pressure of carbon dioxide in their blood drops, which causes their blood pH to rise, making it way too alkaline. To fix this, the kidneys slowly try to compensate by increasing hydrogen ions, but this is a sluggish process that can take several days to actually catch up. And this brilliantly illustrates the reality on the ground in intensive care units everywhere. Chronic respiratory alkalosis is one of the most common acid-base disturbances seen in critically ill patients. It's a huge red flag. Finding this state in a patient often portends a really poor prognosis and warns the medical team that rapid respiratory failure might be imminent. The patient is literally exhausting themselves just trying to breathe. That sets the stage perfectly for Section 4, Pneumothorax Threat, High Altitude Risks. If a patient's lungs are already compromised, a spontaneous pneumothorax, a collapsed lung, escalates the stakes tremendously, especially when we introduce the unique, terrifying physics of high altitudes. 33%. Just think about that number for a second. According to Boyle's law, as ambient pressure drops, trapped gas expands. It's just physics. So if an aviator has an untreated 20% pneumothorax and travels up to 8,000 feet, that trapped pocket of gas will expand by approximately 33%. This massive expansion can cause a catastrophic physiological deficit and basically instant incapacitation while flying. Because of that extreme risk, doctors have to look for the critical physical exam findings that demand immediate medical attention, long before a patient ever sets foot in an aircraft. They're looking for ipsilateral pleuritic chest pain, which just means sharp pain on the exact same side as the collapse. They're looking for dyspnea, rapid breathing, asymmetrical chest wall expansion, and they are actively listening for a hyperresonant hollow sound when tapping the chest, accompanied by diminished breath sounds through the stethoscope. All right, shifting gears to Section 5, Remote Monitoring, Modern Healthcare Tech. We've seen how complex these respiratory symptoms are, but here's where the story shifts. We are currently moving the monitoring of these exact intricate respiratory symptoms out of the hospital and straight into the digital clinic. Let's see how this builds a modern healthcare ecosystem. At the core of the telemedicine platform, you have provider portals, patient portals, data analytics, and electronic health record systems, all seamlessly converging. It's like a giant digital web. Instead of relying solely on an in-person physical exam, doctors can now track patient data remotely, catching the early signs of respiratory distress before it ever becomes a full-blown crisis. And this is what the modern workflow actually looks like. It starts with a patient appointment request, flows into clinical triage, and then triggers a telemedicine eligibility check. The system helps determine if those severe symptoms we just learned to decode, like dyspnea or referred pain, can be safely managed via a virtual consultation, or if the patient's condition is serious enough to demand an immediate in-person visit. Now, here's where the rubber meets the road, how this actually gets implemented and paid for in the real world. The 2025 Medicare billing codes draw a really clear line. On one side, we have RPM, Remote Physiologic Monitoring, which tracks hard physiologic vital signs to prevent issues. And on the other, we have RTM, Remote Therapeutic Monitoring, which focuses on tracking non-physiologic data, like those highly specific, self-reported symptoms of a cough or perceived dyspnea to gauge the patient's actual response to treatment. But hey, don't let the word remote fool you. Clinical rigor is absolutely still the name of the game here. To bill for these telemedicine services, the strict rule for 2025 is that at least 16 days of data must be collected and transmitted within a 30-day period using FDA-compliant devices. It requires continuous, completely reliable tracking. You can't just casually ask a patient how they feel on a Zoom call. The digital clinic requires robust, consistent data. Which leaves us with a pretty massive question for the future. We've journeyed all the way from decoding the physical acoustic sounds of a cough and the physical tapping of a chest to tracking massive data streams from miles away. So as AI and remote sensors continue to evolve, will the digital clinic eventually render the physical stethoscope completely obsolete? It is a super provocative thought for sure, and one that highlights just how incredibly fast the world of medical diagnostics is changing. Thanks so much for joining me on The Explainer today, and keep learning.